Emma Kelly, and I'm a speech language pathologist with All About Communication. Today I'm hopping on the Instagram to chat with you guys a little bit about what assessments are looking like right now as we're completing them through telehealth and not in person. So the speech language pathologists with All About Communication are able to assess a variety of aspects of language development, such as kids' speech sound development, so their articulation, as well as kids' use and understanding of language and whether or not that's appropriate as based on their age. So how are children using the language that they currently have, and is there other aspects of language that they should be using but they're not? And how are kids understanding the language that they hear? So is there certain areas of difficulty in their understanding that's leading to difficulties with others or leading to communication breakdowns? All those kind of things are considered when we're looking at use and understanding of language. So there's two different approaches that your SLP might kind of consider when they're going to be assessing your child. So they might assess your child informally or formally. So a child who is typically going to be assessed informally might be one who's not yet using a ton of language, or a kid that's young. And this typically just would involve SLPs observing your child when they're interacting with you, asking you guys a lot of questions about your child's language development, including their use and their understanding, and also observing your child when they're playing. So as an SLP, we will always be ready on our end with kind of the list of questions and information that we want to obtain within that assessment period. So on your end, really, you just kind of have to be present with your kiddo, bring a couple toys that you know will engage them so that we can get as much interaction from them as possible, whether that's a favorite book, a favorite ball, even a snack, something that's really, really motivating to them, so we can kind of see how they're willing to interact with you for these items, how they're interacting with you when you're playing with these items, and so forth. While I'm on the Instagram, I thought it would also be kind of a good time to throw in that parents should never feel the need to apologize when their kid is not performing kind of in the way they hoped that they would in the assessment period. We are never going to judge your child based on the fact that maybe they're a little bit grouchy, they didn't sleep well. We're really just concerned about their language, and is this frustration or becoming upset resulting from a communication breakdown? Is there something that we can do in terms of kind of a goal, or how can we support your to limit these opportunities where they're becoming upset? Okay, so that was kind of a ramble on about informal assessment. I do apologize. But moral of the story, you just kind of need to be present with your kid in a nice space where you're able to sit on the floor with them and play with some of those activities that you know you'll really be able to engage your child with. So now I'll chat about formal assessment, and this is really completed with kids who are able to kind of sit at a table, flip through a book with the SLP and answer the questions that they're asking. So a lot of the times this would be kind of geared towards preschool age children and up, and they're struggling with kind of that use and understanding of language or their sound development, also or fluency or motor speech, as those are typically the ages in which kids can sit and focus their attention for a specific amount of time. And formal assessments are great in the sense that they are standardized, which means that researchers before the development of the test would have compiled a lot of research that allows them to compare what your child scores at versus a large group of children the same age as your child. So that means it allows us to identify, is your child performing at where they need to be? Are they performing lower than what we would expect for their age, or are they actually performing higher than what we would expect based on their age? And that really helps us as SLPs identify those areas that we can target in therapy. So as I mentioned before, these formal assessments would kind of be me and your child looking at a book together, and I'm asking them questions that will kind of allude to their different skill areas as well as areas requiring support. But obviously that would look different, teletherapy, but it's actually pretty awesome the way we've been able to keep implementing these assessments, even though all of these kind of rules and stuff have changed. So Hannah and Christina have been generous enough to set the SLPs up with this program that's actually kind of a database online of all these different assessments that we are used to using in person, but everything that we could possibly need to work with your kid during an assessment period is online. So I will show you guys a little bit what that might look like. So I apologize in advance for my messy office space, but this is a test right here that we have access to online that we would use to assess school-age children's use and understanding of language, which would include aspects of like grammar, whether their sentence structure is appropriate based on their age, are they understanding different concepts, are they able to follow directions that involve different steps and components, that kind of thing. And as you can see, it's a nice big test, but it's very easy for me to scroll through. So your child would have access where they would be able to see the screen and everything that they need to for the question that I'm asked. So in a situation like this, where I need your child to kind of point to the appropriate answer, what I like to do is I like to label each one with a number. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I would visually write that for your child on the screen so they can tell me, oh, it's picture number 1, it's picture number 4 for the correct answer versus them pointing to it, which is what we would ask them to do in person. That being said, I'm also capable of giving your child control of my mouse from my desktop, and they can move their mouse around to show me, yep, the correct answer is number 1, the correct answer is number 4, and so on. So that's also another way. If your child might not be comfortable using the number system, then they can totally gesture to it with the mouse. Here is actually even easier for us to complete on teletherapy versus the other one that I just showed you guys. And this is something that I frequently use when I'm assessing a child's sound development, so their articulation. And this book is fantastic because it really just requires your child to label the image that they see. And it also looks at every consonant and every position of a word. So say the sound we're considering is P. So it would look at it in the beginning of the word, so in the word pig, at the end of the words like cup. It's not just this picture of the one house, it's a ton of different pictures that we would go through to get that idea of where they're having difficulties, if they're having difficulties. The other aspect of teletherapy assessments too is that we're looking at something, if we're looking at something like motor speech, where as an SLP we really want to see how your child's mouth is moving when they're making certain sounds or when they're using certain words. It's super easy to do so because your child is sitting in front of their computer where they have that camera turned on. They're able to see me modeling how my mouth is moving when I'm making sounds, and I'm able in turn to see how they're moving their mouth in response to me or even just spontaneously in conversation. So we do ask that if your child is kind of completing one of these more formal assessments where we ask that they're sitting at a table, good seating is always preferred. So at a table where they have a spot to put their computer or their laptop or their iPad, whatever you guys have that you're using. And that their face is in full view, especially if we're wanting to see kind of how their mouth is moving, because it's really hard to get an idea of if your child's having difficulties moving their mouth when the camera's like this or when it's like this. So back at a spot where they can see our full face and we can see their full face is the ideal positioning. Okay, one last thing before I sign off, because I feel like you guys are sick of hearing my voice, because I'm sick of hearing my voice, is that we can also always take game breaks or movement breaks during these assessment periods because, yeah, they're not as fun as therapy, if I'm being honest. Okay, I feel like that was a ton of information. If anything was not clear, please do send us a message. Me or Hannah or anyone else will be more than happy to answer that and give you guys some more clarification if you need it. If you are concerned about your child's speech and language development, always feel free to reach out to schedule an assessment for your child. Like I said, we are always super flexible and willing to modify the assessment session however we need to in order for it to work best for your child, and so that we can see your child be as successful as possible, which can really give us an idea of their strengths and areas where they do require support, which allows us to move forward with the most appropriate therapy plan or even just any sort of plan, which gives us ways can best support you guys in helping your children achieve those goals. Okay, I'm out. It's been a slice all about communication Instagram. Hope to hear from you guys soon. I'd love to assess